but I can back them up. Boom. End of story. There is no other crypto out there, so don't get it twisted. If you don't understand where you're parking your money, you're gonna pay the consequences for that, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. Boom. We're obliterating everybody, literally. There is nobody else that comes close to what Hex has done. Boom. Oh, it's about to get funky. Funkier than you could have ever imagined. You know, Richard Hart is a boss. Hex is literally the best thing on the planet. It's simple mathematics. Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening and good morning, depending on where you're at. I am here with George Wentz Jr., who is a distinguished lawyer with many decades of experience. And I got to say, if you're not familiar with this gentleman, get familiar, because he's been around and he knows what's going on. And these are the kind of people that we need to hear from. Right, because it's one thing to hear a Wells only telling you something and giving you some factual information. It's another thing to talk to somebody that was there at that point in time when we talk about whatever we're talking about, right? And I think that that's why it's important to have conversations with all kinds of individuals across the board. The issues that we face today are not unique to one specific area of endeavor, right, that we find ourselves familiarizing ourselves with, but it encompasses everything that we know, like, and love. And George Wentz is one of those individuals that when he is called to action, right, he takes action. And these are the kind of things that you need to know about the people that you're working with, right? It's one thing to have a conversation with someone that's in your field. It's another thing to have a conversation with someone that is actually an action taker, a doer, a failure, a succeeder, right? A successor, a person that succeeds and a person that fails. And this is how we learn. This is how we get better at life. This is how we get to the top. It's not handed to us. Welcome, Mr. Wentz. How you doing today?
Wells, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that introduction and your kind words.
Oh, my pleasure. I got to say thank you for taking the time out on this federal holiday to sit with us and have a conversation about this unique point in time in which we find ourselves today. Interestingly enough, I'm familiar with you prior to seeing you on YouTube, most recently with our other community members. And I got to tell you, you know, my experience with you, sir, goes back a ways. When I was a young man, straight out of high school, I joined the military. Straight out of high school, 17. This was 2001, 2002. Like towards the end, I graduate, go to boot camp. 2003, I'm flying over to Germany, and a month later, I'm eating dust and bullets. So I'm 18 at this time. I'm trying to figure out what we are doing in this place called Iraq. By the time I had left theater, I was more familiar with that country than I was with my own. And this this is something to say, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of guys like me. I'm not unique. I'm just one of the many.
And we're still there.
And we're still there.
To this
And
day.
some come back and some don't. But I think the bigger question is why did we even end up there in the first place? And you know, that's a question with not one answer. And this is the interesting thing about everything that we have to engage with, right?
Yeah.
You know, what do you think as you find yourself in 2022 was probably a major turning point in our history as far as military action goes, just as far back as you can remember?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the table was set during the close of World War II, with Operation Paperclip and a lot of the things that happened there, pulling German scientists out into the United States, getting all of their technology, um, standing up the intelligence agencies at the same time, at the end of that period of time, allowing the expansion of the intelligence agencies following the creation of agencies in general during the 30s. I mean, it's difficult to analyze anything that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan without analyzing the rise of the intelligence agencies in the United States, standalone agencies that controlled the intelligence. And this was really a phenomenon that took place originally with Wild Bill Donovan and the SOS, and leading to the CIA, the establishment of the CIA. During that same period of time, just a little before, we have the FBI established. We have, for the first time, a federal police force domestically. We complement that with a Central Intelligence Agency internationally. We then pull in, all of the defense agencies and intelligence units that were created. And now we have this standalone sort of bureaucracy that is controlling the elected politicians who are supposed to be the representatives of the people. But if you want to control those elected representatives, then you must control the information upon which they act. And so therefore, if there's one thing that I think has kept us in eternal conflict post what was supposed to be, the last time that we would do that as a nation, World War II. I mean, we referred to World War I as, the war to end all wars. And
Right.
unfortunately,
Wasn't quite the
that
case.
was a misnomer entirely, because it's shortly thereafter we were in World War II. And it was,
Yes.
another travesty, a terrible thing. But in all of these conflicts, I believe are absolutely awful. But if we have had, since World War II, we have been in constant military operation in the
Hmm.
United States in one form or another
That's right.
every year thereafter. And if you count all of the operations that are done offshore by various intelligence agencies, there's just really not been a time when we have not been in some form of conflict. And that could be by design, that if we are constantly letting off pressure, then maybe there won't be a huge conflagration like World War I and World War II were. But it
Hmm.
could also be that the military industrial complex needs to have a reason to exist,
Right.
and that therefore those conflicts support that. Now, I'm not a person who is a pacifist. I mean, I love my nation, and I believe that we are, a ship afloat in a sea of peril, and that we must be prepared to defend our families, our nation, and that there are nations who would love to take us down. So I believe that we do need a robust defense, but I do not believe that we need, um, you know, our young men deployed over the globe constantly at all times forever. This
Right.
is this is not this is not what I believe is best for the American people. And if you look at the deficits that we're running, um, then we have to admit, I think, that this is unsustainable. And if we look at the impact that this constant spending is having on the dollar as the reserve currency, um, and the inflation that we're experiencing today, I think all of these things go together, and they're all connected. And it's not the way I would run things. It's not. I wish we had a whole different policy. You know.
Right, of course. I mean, I got to tell you, one of my famous lines is if you can sit there and tell me that somebody voted for 2020, show me who they were. Look, look
Yeah.
around and tell me who voted for this. Please point them out so I
Right.
can slap them,
Right.
because clearly nobody has voted for anything that's happened ever. Like, that's my point of view, and this is exactly what makes your salient point so obvious, right? I mean, all you literally have to do is look outside. You can't sit here and tell me that this is something that anybody wanted, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say no one voted for it, because that's a unfortunate fact of the way that our government has evolved since the creation of the agencies that I spoke of. There's a law called the Administrative Procedures Act, which was came in during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration, and in the dealing with the Great Depression that followed World War I and preceded World War II. We had this Great Depression, and FDR was trying to address it, and he was creating agencies to do so. And he took the position that if you look at our Constitution, which has three branches: legislative to make laws, executive to execute the laws, and the courts to interpret the laws, that there is not this permanent bureaucratic structure built in there. And
Right.
that's because most everything that was supposed to take place in the country was supposed to be handled by the states that had general police powers. By police, it's health, safety, and welfare of the public. Those powers really dominated in the old days. And so what happened with the agencies that I speak of being created was that they took over more and more of our daily lives, regulating more and more of our daily lives. And originally, Franklin Delano Roosevelt proposed that there must be a constitutional amendment to make this happen. And Congress then stepped in and passed the law. But the difficulty is that if you look at the Constitution, nowhere will you see anything regarding permanent agencies.
Of
It's
course
not
not.
addressed at all. And so now when you say no one voted for where we are, that's because 99% of everything we deal with is not a law passed by Congress, but is actually a regulation passed by some sort of federal agency
Some
that
technical.
impacts every single aspect of our lives. And those bureaucrats and technocrats that make those regulations, they cannot be voted out. They are
That's right.
not accountable to the people. They are an independent force. And so this is where we have what I call federal overreach, massive federal overreach that I see going on daily. And those people that are making that happen are truly not accountable to the people. We are supposed to be a nation that self governs. We're the longest experiment in self governance that's ever taken place. But unfortunately, we have lost that self governance. And now, more and more, every single thing that we do is controlled by people who are unaccountable to us and cannot be voted out of office. And I think that's a travesty.
100%. I mean, if you just look at how monetary power, well, quote unquote, monetary policy is conducted in this nation, that's the prime example.
Absolutely.
Prime
Absolutely.
example.
Where'd the Fed come from? Where in the Constitution does it talk about the Fed?
Nowhere. But you can find the
Nowhere.
Federal Reserve Act of 1913 to let you know all about it, though.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is that really consistent with the structure of the Constitution? I mean, I am an
Of course
outlier
not. Yeah,
in
of course not.
constitutional law. Many constitutional professors at law schools would disagree with everything I'm saying, but I go back to the original um, blueprint that was represented for our government in the Constitution. And I look at it and I interpret it and I see where we were supposed to be. And our nation was a robustly independent libertarian structure in the original intent of the framers of the Constitution. And why would it be any way else? They were coming out of a war against the largest military in the world, a tyrannical English government. King George could do whatever he wanted to do. And so they were never going to allow a situation to occur where the central government could be like King George was and become tyrannical. They did their best to prevent it, but unfortunately, we as Americans have been asleep at the switch, and we have allowed it to become more and more overreaching and more centralized power. And we're seeing the result of that now as we look at mandates, we look at things where our lives are encroached, our liberties are encroached, our monetary system is devalued. These are all things that I think are of concern, and I wish people would be more concerned about them. And one of the reasons that I do what I do is because I believe that all these things are happening, and I'm looking for alternative ways to push back against it, and in my way contribute to the freedom, independence, and self-reliance of people throughout the world.
100%. I mean, it's interesting when you sit here and think about what we have today versus what we started with. And I think the biggest issue is the simple fact that people don't even realize that the term democracy is nowhere in the initiation of this institution that we have today. However, it is the ringing bell that we constantly hear on a daily basis instead of what it is or what it's supposed to be, which is a constitutional republic, right?
That
And
is
this
correct.
is this is the biggest issue that I think we have just from a very foundational level as far as what people are allowed to say with respect to what America is and it is not. Right, because it's not a democracy. It's not mob rules over here. It's take care of your damn self, right? Like that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, and it's supposed to protect the point of view of the minority, and it's very
Correct.
interesting to me. I mean, you know this, so I mean, I'll just say it for the other folks listening. I mean, democracy means that if 50.00001% of the people believe something, then that's what rules.
Right.
Well, you can imagine how bad that is if you're trying to run a country, because that means that you're always at war with one another as to get that extra 0.000.1 on your side. And then that is the one rule that works for the entire area that is controlled by this pure democracy. And the founders and the framers, they were not for that at all.
Negative.
And so they broke up power. And, we hear about the checks and balances, but what we don't hear a whole lot about is something called dual sovereignty, which is the separation of powers between the federal government, which was supposed to be limited in power by enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, as opposed to the states, which reserved a whole lot of power and had the general police power. And that dual sovereignty is what we've gotten away from. And over the course of my lifetime, and actually it started before that with the 16th Amendment, the 17th Amendment to the
Hmm.
Constitution. These all took power away from the states and federalized things. And the course of my lifetime, we've just seen more and more power amassed in the federal government. And the reason that we have all of these, the reason that we have become so unable to get anything done is because of that. If the power was in 50 different states and you didn't like what California was doing, you could move to Idaho. You could
Right.
move to Texas. You could move to Florida. To some extent, you still can. But now most of the power is with the federal government, and the federal government is one size fits all.
Right.
And in a nation as large and diverse as ours, and culturally diverse as ours, I would posit that one size simply does not fit all. And that if you try to have a one size fit all solution, what you're going to get is 50% of the country that disagrees with it. Even, people look at this last election and they say that there was some sort of a mandate that was given to the Democrat Party because they won the election. But it was a squeaker by votes, and more people voted for the Republican ticket than the Democrat ticket than had ever happened before in the history. And so you have 75 million that voted and turned out and voted on one side of the answer, and you have
Right.
75 and a half that voted on the other side of the answer. Well, my goodness, that is a divided nation. That's a severely divided nation. And if we're going to make one size fit all directed from Washington, D.C., that runs across the entire country and is the only answer that we can have as to how we live almost every single aspect of our daily lives, that's simply not going to work for very long. And if you read the Federalist Papers, you will see that they talked about this and
Yes,
they
sir.
knew this. And that's why they left so much to localities, because people are different and people do have different points of view and there are different solutions. And guess what? There needs to be different solutions.
That's right. So I hope everybody that's listening heard that. Diversity is the nexus of what this country was founded on, because that is the
Yes.
only way you can have an amalgamation of different peoples, regardless of skin color. Because guess what? Everybody has a knucklehead, regardless of race, right? Everybody has a genius, regardless of race. Everybody has a comedian, regardless of race. Like this,
Yeah, yeah,
just to put that out there, right? Because that's
yeah,
very obvious, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because there's this idea out there which I cannot stand because it's so factually incorrect, that the U.S. Constitution, or the Constitution, is a living and breathing document. That is factually incorrect. That document is meant to be universal and is supposed to be meant to stand the test of time. It's not something that was written to be amended at people's whims along the way, because
And
that's what.
certainly not something that was meant to be amended by five unelected, unaccountable judges wearing robes in
Correct.
Washington, D.C., right?
That is
I mean,
right.
most of the amendment of the Constitution wasn't done with the people being involved at all. This
Right.
is what I object to. I mean, I think if we go back and we look at errors along the way, there were
Mhm.
some. I mean, I believe that one of the reasons that the federal government gained so much strength vis-a-vis the states was the 17th Amendment. And if people don't know what that was, in the original design of the Constitution, the state legislatures appointed the senators in Washington, D.C. So therefore, when the state legislators who are closest to the people in the state, know them the best, live with them, go to church with them, their kids go to school with their kids, they meet them in the grocery store. How often do you run into a congressman or a senator from Washington, D.C. as you're bombing around your state? You really don't very often, but you
Right.
do run into the people that are in your state legislature. And so, and you're very close to those, and they come from your direct community. And so, therefore, the idea was that those people knew the state the best, and they would be best to appoint the senators. And why was that important? That was important so that they could recall them, that they could influence them, that they could have control over them. And once that was bypassed, the idea that the states could restrict the power of the federal government was also bypassed significantly. And so the
Right.
17th Amendment came along during a time right after the 16th, which bypassed states for funding the federal government. Prior to the 16th Amendment, the states actually funded the federal government, other than tariffs and land sales. So
Right.
you had checks of the state on the federal government that were bypassed by the 16th and 17th Amendment, substantially federalizing the nation that had before been a system of independent states cooperating together. And this gave a lot of power to the federal government. And we see the massive growth after that. The other thing is that you see, to get back to your original point,
Mhm.
you see a whole lot more war after that time.
100%.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, right?
Yeah, yeah. But that's because there's now centralized power.
That's
I'll tell
right.
you just one quick historical story since we're talking about these types of things. And I've never had a conversation on one of these shows like this. So this is really, really interesting to me, Wales, that you're into this stuff. I'm an obscure little historian, legal guy that knows all these crazy things. But one of the things that the original design was intended to do was restrict the ability of the federal government to go and get engaged in foreign wars. And
Right.
the way that happened was that we had citizens militias throughout the whole United States at the time, and they were the armed forces. And the framers were concerned about a standing army because they had seen what Napoleon had done. They'd seen what, well, I guess they hadn't seen Napoleon by then, but they had seen what standing armies had done in Europe, and
Sure.
they could be abused. And of course, they'd been up against the largest standing, army. in the world under King George, which was at his bidding to do whatever they wanted. Our system was very different. The citizens would come and they were responsible for making sure that our country was safe. And the framers felt that a standing army was the quickest route to tyranny. And a great example of that is James Madison was president. He declared war against England, the War of 1812. And one of the reasons that he did that was because he wanted to invade Canada and make it a state and take, yeah, he did. And so at the time, and this is constitutional, it says that the
Right.
president must go to the governors of the state and call forth the militia. And so little Jimmy Madison, wanting to take, the armed forces of the United States, which were at that time state militias, state-controlled militias, up to Canada and invade, he had three governors say, "I'm sorry, Jimmy, that's unconstitutional. We're not doing it." As a result, Canada was never invaded.
Right.
Think of the difference now, where
Incredible.
federalize the entire military and we have this massive standing army. Is
Sure
it
do.
likely that we're going to engage in foreign adventures under those circumstances than when we go to governors and we have to get 50 governors to go along with it?
Surprisingly, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. So the federalization of our armed forces has also taken place during, and that was not in the original blueprint either.
No, it's not.
All of this, I think, leads, independent ability to fund through debt, the
Right.
Federal Reserve, right?
Right. Well,
Now we
hold
can
on.
just issue T-bills.
Let me pause you right there because I happened to look up when the 17th Amendment was passed. And interestingly enough, it lines up with guess what?
Yeah.
It was passed. It was first off, it was proposed in 1912. And it became a part of the Constitution on April 8th, 1913. Now,
1913, yeah.
when was the Federal Reserve Act passed? December.
1913, huh?
That's right.
Yep.
Not a coincidence, sir. All strategically done. Because
It would
this
seem
gave
to
him the
me,
power. This gave him the power to
right.
be able to pull that off.
Yeah, and if you look at about that same time, there was preceding that a militia act that federalized significantly the state-controlled militias, which are now referred to as National Guards. And so that check that the citizens' militias under the power of the state, um, instituted, significantly granted much more power to the federal government. So this is where we are today. And, all of these things are interesting historically, but I don't think that we're ever going to be able to undo them. And so a lot of what I focus on is, okay, how do we maximize our liberties here and protect ourselves from further encroachment, given the fact that the political system at the national level seems to have been pretty much overrun. And
Right.
what can we do that is not involved in politics? Because having been involved in politics, I know, I am supportive of people who want more freedom and independence and self-reliance for our citizens in the United States. But I do think that there's ways that we can advance those causes without having to do that. And I think, for example, cryptocurrency is like a major one of those,
100%. Yeah, let's talk about MAD for a little bit and then let's get into crypto. So how'd you get involved with MAD? And what do you think I guess the biggest foundational piece is that you guys have to stand up?
Okay, now MAD, the MAD, M-A-D, it stands for Make a Difference. And MAD came from a bunch of different technologies that were brought to me that when I looked at them one day back in sort of 2018, I had this vision of how we could massively change the world for the better if we could roll these out, implement them, and make them work synergistically. The difficulty for most technology that is disruptive is that anytime you are messing with the status quo, someone's ox gets gored, and therefore they want to prevent this disruptive tech from being rolled out. So that
100%.
was the challenge that I had. I was involved with technology that allows us to deliver electricity globally, safely, wirelessly. All right. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. I mean, that changes
100%.
everything.
Yeah.
And you may think that that's like, wow, how radical is that? But having lived through a time when I was in high school and junior high, if I wanted to talk to my girlfriend, I had a telephone receiver that was connected to this curly wire that went to a box on the
Right.
wall, you know, and I'm
Yes,
in
sir.
my kitchen and I'm supposed to have, I'm supposed to be cool and, have this conversation with this good looking woman on the other side of that phone in front of my family and my brother and my sister and all this stuff, you know. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember that very well. And now, during the course of my lifetime, no one would ever think that a phone would be connected to a curly wire to a box on the wall.
Oh
But
no, it's
wireless
crazy.
has come a long, long way. And the idea of wireless electricity, while it's radical to us, I don't think it's that much more radical than the idea that we get Wi-Fi through the air, that we get, telephone through the air. We get all of these things through the air now through radio frequencies. And
Right.
so the idea that you can safely deliver commercial grade power wirelessly globally, while it's radical and I love it and it changes absolutely everything, having lived through this revolution, I can understand it.
Right.
So I
Right.
had that tech.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, so I had that tech and I knew those guys. I knew the inventors and I knew what was happening there and I was working with them and I was sort of an informal advisor to them. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how do we get to a cleaner production of the actual power. So wireless is a
Right.
delivery system. It doesn't create any power. You still
Right.
have to generate the electricity that will be transmitted through that wireless wave. So what can't we come up with better ways to do that? I had on my desk, I had advanced geothermal technology that had not been rolled out, you know.
Right.
I had the next generation of computing technology because how do we make all this happen? How do we make the vision of vehicles that are fed real-time electricity through a receiver wirelessly? Oh, that means I have unlimited range. But what was
Right.
happening? We were getting into autonomous vehicles. I was on a panel in 2017 in Silicon Valley, and there was a lot of autonomous vehicle companies that were working on that at the time. And one of the things that's a real problem with that is called latency. And
Right.
because of the architecture of our computing technology as it exists today, it has extreme latency. Well, if I want to power a quadricopter wirelessly so it has unlimited range and I can really max out my payload because I'm not carrying batteries to power it, I'm actually getting real-time wireless feed, then the autonomous nature of that and the sort of flight path control and everything, latency is actually literally a killer
Right.
because if that vehicle is supposed to stop because another vehicle is coming at it and each vehicle has a 3-second latency, that's called a crash, right? That's not
Right.
going to happen. That's not going to end well.
No.
So, computer technology, I had been approached by these brilliant guys that were rolling out an advanced new computer architecture. So I had the wireless, I had energy production, I had a next generation computing technology. All of these changed the world, man. They just absolutely changed. So with all of those, everything I just laid out there for you, I could live on top of a mountain if I wanted to. I could
Sure thing.
receive my electricity wirelessly so I could heat, I could cool, I could run a well, I could do anything I wanted to do. And I wouldn't need roads because I could call in an autonomous quadricopter to come and pick me up and take me wherever I wanted to go.
Right.
So the freedom and the independence that's generated by these techs when you look at them together, and the other thing that they do is that they create a much cleaner, healthier environment because we're not burning coal, we're not burning any fossil fuels by the
Right.
time we get there because we are using the heat of the interior of the earth to create our energy system and the production of electricity. and that is carbon free, it's pollution free. All of these things together I had on my desk, and I went, whoa, I need to roll these out. And
Right.
that was really the beginning of the Make a Difference venture, which was to get us as quickly as we can to new forms of energy generation, energy delivery systems, and transportation, all in the cleanest possible manner so that we can have the healthiest possible environment to leave to our children. But there's another reason that I was so excited about this, because I've been hearing John Kerry from Davos talk about how the federal government or some internationally controlled power structure needs to take over energy generation and transmission globally. And if that happens, then we become total serfs. I mean,
Right.
we cannot allow some command and control global structure to dictate to us our energy, because if they're providing our energy, then they can cut off our energy, and energy is essential to life, and
Hun-
therefore we cannot allow that to be globally centralized and controlled, and we have to allow the people to control it. And that's what MAD is all about. And that's why MAD has a different structure, reaching out to the people to allow the people to come in, buy our tokenized equity, get that token, become part of the solution. We're bypassing every single power structure, and we're taking it directly to the people. And that's going to mess them up in Davos, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the funniest thing, right? I was having a conversation yesterday, interestingly enough, talking about this kind of the same thing, and had to point out to somebody that all this green energy nonsense isn't really green, right? Because it all requires mining of lithium, because
Right.
everything is supposed to be predicated on battery power.
Yep.
Um, and who controls all of that lithium? Well,
Chinese.
that's right. They're
Chinese
the
Communist Party.
that's right. They're the sole controllers and producers of lithium. So, for all of those of you out there that are loving the Tesla vibe, understand what you're subjecting yourself to and understand what you're contributing to, right? And this is all about educating yourselves, right? If you don't understand what's happening politically, you don't understand what's happening, period. Because geopolitics is what actually makes this world go round. And this is why monetary policy matters. This is why geopolicy matters, right? This is why we're having all these conversations. I mean, I remember being a kid, and let me tell you a little bit about my background and why I even know about any of this nonsense. And it's because when I was a kid and I was out there in Iraq, I was a generator mechanic, interestingly enough. So I'm very familiar with the issues of an electrician and power distribution and power production and power generation and all those fun things, transmission, getting power from A to B to Z to D, all those fun things that you got to deal with when you have to power up a city or whatever have you, right? Whatever structure or infrastructure
Sure.
setup it is that you're trying to tackle. And
Right.
it's not easy, right? It's not easy. And this is with the combustion engine tools that we currently have, right?
Yep.
So imagine having the ability to harness, energy that's always there, always, because
Yep.
geothermal energy is constant. It's just there, right? I mean, it's
Right.
not like it's fluctuating. It's literally just there.
The heat
So
of the earth is the heat of the earth. I mean,
yeah,
it's there.
correct. Yeah.
Geothermal plants that were stood up in the 60s are still producing as many kilowatt hours as they were in the very beginning.
Look at that.
So,
Yeah.
the
Proof is in the
trouble is
pudding,
that
as they
they're
say.
the trouble is that the hot rocks aren't where the people are, and the hot rocks are
Right.
out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, there's some places in
Yes.
California where that's not true, and they are using geothermal, but generally it's very remote. And the whole problem is that by the time you build wire transmission to get it from the hot rocks to where it needs to be, two things have happened. You've spent more money on capital costs than you can possibly spend to get it to the people effectively and cost effectively.
Right.
And secondly, the longer you're pushing that current across wires,
The
the
weaker it
more
gets.
depletion of the current there is. And so you know that, but from your military experience.
Hmm.
So if you have to go massive distances, you lose electricity and it's less efficient.
Right, right. So the
Yeah.
interesting thing is how will being able to, essentially transmit energy from point A to point Z wirelessly, how will that change the game? I mean, that's going to
Oh
be
man. Well,
insane.
just imagine. I mean, first of all, you know, there's look at the capex, the capital expenditure required to
Hmm.
make this happen. You have to build a transmission tower, but then all you need on anywhere in the world, once you set that transmission tower up, uh, according to the experiments and all the testing and that has been taking place by the inventors of this so far, we will be able to, based on their studies and based on things that I do believe, we will be able to roll this out globally. So one tower can create a wave which actually wraps the earth. And therefore, I could produce geothermal electricity in Idaho, where there are some very wonderful geothermal formations,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I can deliver it to areas of Africa that have never seen electricity before, that don't have
Right,
clean water, that don't have refrigeration, that don't have sewer treatment, right? The
right.
diseases and the quality of the diseases we can do away with and the quality of life we could create by that one example there is massive.
Yes, sir.
Clean water, clean, handling
I mean,
handling
just
waste correctly,
basic
basic human needs.
Yeah, just basic human needs that just, when you don't grow up with those things in mind and they're not standard, they don't exist. And it's hard for
Right,
people that grow up in that environment to not realize that, right? I mean, I
right.
remember when I found myself in Iraq, we had to burn our own feces and urine. There was no way to get rid of it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the kind of things that you don't think of as a person that just has never had to deal with anything outside
Right.
of having a standard bathroom, kitchen, roof over your head, right? Or a bedroom and all that. So these are the kind of things that, they're foreign to most people. So they can't even fathom how this is even an issue, right? But
Right.
it's a
I mean,
major issue.
if you look at the nation of Haiti, which is half of the Dominican
I'm from that country.
Republic
I'm from,
island, Dominica,
yeah,
right?
I'm from the
So you got
Dominican
Haiti on
Republic.
one side, you got the Dominican Republic on the other side.
Hmm.
Haiti has had just terrible, terrible policies for many, many, many years. I mean, from the
Yeah,
50s forward.
100%.
And when you fly over Haiti and you see the Dominican Republic, you can see the border very clearly from the air because every single tree has been taken from the land in Haiti. Why? They don't have energy and they use it for cooking. Believe it or not, that's
Yeah,
how they cook their meals is on wood fires. So the entire island has been denuded, and you can see the border because there's no trees on one side and there's abundant forest on the other side.
yes,
So
sir.
energy and the provision of abundant available energy is the underlying mechanism for the development of the world and the development of industry, the development of business, the development of interaction and commerce, the development of a better quality of life. Without these things, we are basically living in, not, I wouldn't say the Stone Age, but I mean, we are living in a pre-industrial state,
Sure.
and the lives are shorter, the illnesses are worse. Children's education, that it's basically they're just focusing on survival,
Sure.
and this can be changed, and this vision that we have for the future changes it, and the
100%.
technology is here and now. This is not something that, there's actually a tower that has been built that launches a wave of the exact nature I'm describing to you. And
Right.
this is something that in the next 5 years is going to be a reality, in my opinion, based upon everything that I've seen and everything that I've studied, and MAD is going to be part of that.
Right, right. I mean, it's interesting. When you look at the objects or the abilities that you or the just what you guys are working on, all the different projects you guys are working on. These are all things that, if you look at history, they've been done before or have existed already. They are not new at all whatsoever. So you're 100%
Yep.
correct from that vantage
Yep.
point. And what's
I mean, Tesla,
interesting,
look, Tesla had
yeah,
wireless electricity. I mean, the
right,
Weidencliff, I mean, he was put out of business by JP Morgan because JP Morgan was invested in copper mines. And, he felt like wireless would hurt his copper mining business. So he actually destroyed and prevented this wireless technology from being used back at the turn of the last century, the 1900s.
right. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yes, that's as a New Yorker where Con Ed rules, I'm
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
well versed in in that
Yeah,
history.
yeah. Yep.
Because we have
Yep.
to deal with those criminals here all the time. It's quite something.
Yep.
Um, and it takes me to kind of w- that nexus that we find ourselves in now with when we think of the last 10 years and the changes we've seen in monetary, just in the monetary environment overall. We have monetary policy globally or worldwide where, negative interest rates or zero interest is the policy. And then you have all of these, so-called authoritative figures trying to find ways to kibosh the crypto world, but it cannot because they would have to kibosh their own form of power, in essence, right? I mean, they cannot
Yeah.
operate without the internet, so they can't kill what we are now having in our back pocket as the best tool we've ever had to give ourselves the freedom and the liberty and the sovereignty that we were born with in the first place.
Right.
So this is an interesting point in time, and I think the biggest issue, um, as I've been in this since basically day one, and I mean I even ignored it for like 4 years, is just the fact that there's no education. Like, people just don't know that crypto exists. Never mind hex, people just don't know that cryptocurrency is a thing in a lot of aspects. I mean, they're probably learning about it now because they're pushing this NFT nonsense so hardcore, because you know how that works. They want people to put their money where they shouldn't. And not to say that some NFTs aren't worth something, but on a very general basis, right? That's like saying just buy any stock and it's going to go up. It's just not always going to be the case.
That's
So,
correct.
right, you have to be very careful where you allocate capital and how you look at these things, because um, value is elusive, right? When value isn't really there, you think you're paying for something that has value, and guess what? You just threw some money into the wind, like you just gave it away.
I mean, you're familiar with the what they call the tulip bulb bubble,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a great example of what can happen when the underlying value proposition of whatever it is you're investing in is flawed. So everybody wanted tulip bulbs, but the inflation in tulip bulb pricing went through the roof. But at the end of the day, a tulip bulb was still a tulip bulb, and it was only
Correct.
worth so much.
Correct.
And
That is
and
right.
and it could be driven by scarcity of tulip bulbs in relationship to the sudden demand of everybody wanting to grow tulips, I imagine. But I'm sure there was also a commodities trading of tulip bulbs that was going on at the same time, a
Right.
secondary market therefore, right? So I
Right.
mean, it's when you think about these things, you go, okay, well, I've seen this before. I mean, there's historical examples of this. And I'm not going to pick out any particular cryptocurrency because I don't want to be negative about what people like or what they want to do. But I mean, I see crypto out there that I don't understand the foundation for it. It's almost more like a fad or like a tulip bulb type of a thing,
Sure
and
thing.
maybe it's driven by scarcity, but we don't even know that because we don't know the production capacity of the different tokens and things of that nature.
Hmm.
Um, one of the things that I like about about what we're doing at M.A.D is that we're tokenizing our equity, the ownership in the company. We're selling actual ownership in the form of a token. So it's equity ownership in the form of a token, a smart contract on the
Sure.
blockchain, right?
Yeah.
But it's backed by all of the operations of what will one day, I believe, and we already have contracts that will allow us to get there when we fulfill these contracts. We already have contracts in place for our power with existing customer that will allow us to be one of the largest, if not the largest, clean energy company in the world when we fulfill it. All of that value is underlying our token, which represents ownership in the company. Plus, there's distributions of the profits that go out to the people who get involved in it. So, when you compare, it's like HEX, if you want to talk about HEX, because I know you do, and I know you love
Mhm.
HEX, and I'm a Hexican. And I mean, basically, MAD is in the HEX community. And
Sure is.
and when we look at HEX, we see the value underlying that, the staking ladder and the way, the smart contract and the way that it generates more hex for those who stake their hex. And
Correct.
there's a long-term value proposition there, right?
Hmm. That's correct.
which
Yeah. I
is
mean,
which is missing from some tokens which only operate on the basis of scarcity.
right.
There's no
Well,
underlying that there's scarcity only. There's no built-in underlying value proposition. That's
right.
what I think. Hex was, when I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is very different.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is that in many cases, it's feigned scarcity. It's not even real scarcity. And then on top of that, you have like this is probably the biggest topping signal that I've seen ever in my life. And I'm just going to read this headline to you. Walmart creates its own cryptocurrency,
Yeah.
NFTs, and enters the metaverse with sales of virtual goods. Walmart of
Yep.
all entities on this
Yep.
plane. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Like, I saw
Yeah.
that. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on? What
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah, the one retailer that probably did more to do away with blue collar jobs in the United
That's right.
States of America than any other single retailer. The one retailer that transferred more wealth from Americans to China than
Yep.
any other single retailer.
That's right. That's right.
There was a time when you would go into Walmart, you couldn't find anything that wasn't made in China. There was nothing there that was made by an American
Yeah.
worker. Period. End of story.
Yep.
And it's, to a large extent, it still is that way, of course.
Yeah.
So now they're going into crypto. This is very, very interesting. What it does show you is that crypto is here to stay. I mean,
Correct. Correct. I mean,
China's tried to
13
do away
years.
with crypto. They can't.
Yeah.
You're not getting rid of this. What's the market cap of crypto whole, right?
2.3 trillion, I think, is the current value right now.
I mean, I think it's up there. It's in the
It's
trillions.
two
It's
two
not going
trillion.
anywhere.
It's 2 trillion right now, literally. 2 trillion
Yeah,
even right now, as
and
we
that's in
speak.
a down market.
Right, right. The highest it's
Yeah,
been is 2.5. And again, people are searching for value, right? And this is kind of the biggest thing that's been like my message, right? Like, well, I've been on Wall Street for 10 years, so as you and I both know, um, oh, it hit a high of 3 trillion. Wow, I didn't even realize that.
I
Um,
thought it was up around three at one point.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it breached 3 trillion. I didn't even realize that. Didn't even realize it. November 10th, 2021, it breached 3 trillion. Didn't realize that.
Yep.
So there is no yield to be found anywhere. Not in short interest rates, not in long term interest rates, nowhere. Not in the stock
Right.
market, nowhere. There's
Right.
no yield to be found anywhere. The only
Right.
thing you can count on is a devaluation of the currency and the debasement of the dollar by the Fed and their QE program, which is how you get asset price inflation, right? And
Correct.
and it's important that people understand that difference because I've talked about this, but it was a long time ago. But this is what you know. I used to be one of those guys that because I thought I understood what was happening in the economy, and this was when I was a dumb guy that didn't understand what was actually going on in the markets. I thought that because I understood the economy was trash, that the market was going to crash. But what I didn't understand is flow versus stock, right? And that's what QE taught me. It took me a little while to figure it out after shorting S&P for like 2, 3 years straight and losing money, but you eventually get it, right? Because you can only lose with so much.
Right.
So, that's when you come to realize there is more going on here than we think, right? And these are the things that make cryptocurrency so important. And when you sit here and you look at the landscape that is crypto now versus what it was when it first became something, let's say 11 years ago, just to talk about a point in time where there was some kind of a market. I mean, nowadays, what we have is just a lot of copycat coins, right? Or tokens, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them. There's many coins in the market, I mean, thousands, and many of them with no actual utility. They just exist to exist.
Right.
And they don't even serve a utility of use outside of you can buy it, sell it, send it, receive it. And that's kind of the one thing that separates Hex from everything else, and that's just that unique aspect that it's literally made to be a definitive store of value, to the point where it even engages you to time lock value for a
Right.
certain period of time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, currency, historically, the definition of money is two main things: it's a means of exchange
Hmm.
and it's a storehouse of value. And what has separated, you know, the reserve currencies of the world, right? Before it was the dollar, it was the pound. And what separated those out was that people felt that they were the best storehouse of value. And since 72, when we detached the Nixon, closed the gold
Yes, sir.
window and detached the dollar from any, gold standard, we have total fiat currency, which is basically a psychological, it's very much like the tulip bulbs,
Right. Correct.
so I mean, we believe the dollar has value because why? We believe it has value. Um,
Literally.
yeah, and since 1913, as you very aptly point out, every dollar bill is actually a treasury note, right?
Hmm. A Federal
By the
Reserve note.
Fed.
A Federal
So a
Reserve note.
note, Federal Reserve note by the Fed. So a note means debt, you know?
That's right. That's right.
That means that what we're getting is a promise to be paid. But what are we paid in? We're paid in another promise to be paid.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
so if this isn't a psychological game of the highest degree, then I don't know what is. I've never seen anything like it. There is no, what is the underlying value? It's a promise by a government which is hooked on eternally printing money and creating massively more debt all the time, that they will pay you back. But what do they promise to pay you back in? A promise that they will pay you back.
That's right. So they
Wow.
they they infinitely promise to pay you back, and people don't realize that that's what they attempt to store their value in,
Right.
right?
And so
And
now, because we've got, we have created so many trillions and trillions of dollars in promises to pay, that if that the interest rates that we can issue on our T bills, which is how we make those promises to pay on the prior T bills that we issued,
right,
right? So
yeah,
now we issue more T bills, and a greater percentage of those T bills goes to paying the old promises to pay. And we can't raise the interest rates, because if we do raise the interest rates, then we have to sell more promises to pay, because a greater portion of what we're selling goes to paying the old promises to pay, right? So we're locked in now, where the Fed is you were saying there's no yield, and my point is there's not going to be any,
correct.
because if the T bills go up, we can't have, you're probably too young to remember, but during the Reagan administration, Paul Volcker came in And Paul, what we were having during the Carter administration, we have a 17% interest rates,
That's right.
right?
I know my economic history, so we can
Yeah.
go
So
down this
Volcker
road if you
came
like.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we had inflation. We had what was called stagflation, which is where
Inflation,
we're heading
yes.
right now. We had a stagnant economy, but we had massive inflation at the same
Yes,
time.
sir.
So we had no productivity, no creation of wealth. But guess what? You had to pay all kinds of money to get it
Yes,
because
sir.
the interest rates were super high. So what Volcker came in is he came into the Fed and he raised the interest rates dramatically during the Reagan administration and sort of wrung the inflation out. And ever since then, we have had a low inflation environment. But now, because we've printed, trillions and trillions of dollars, and this is not a partisan issue. Both parties are hooked on this.
Yes,
Both
sir.
parties are into this drug. They
Yep.
inject in it, baby. They mainline in those T
Yeah.
bills, and they all want to mainline those T bills. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, doesn't make any difference. They mainline in those, buddy. And therefore, because they're going to continue to do that, they cannot afford to raise the rates because it means that they wouldn't be able to pay back what they just borrowed the day before. So,
Correct.
how do you get to yields? How can a guy like Volcker come in and handle this? You'd have to have a massive restructuring of the federal government, how it's spending, what it's doing. I mean, you know, it's it is pretty amazing that we're in this situation. So, if you look, just to loop this back to my vision for MAD,
Sure.
and the reason that we tokenize the equity, there are a couple of reasons. Um, One was because we wanted to reduce the barrier to entry. And as you know, being Wall Street guy, you know how much it costs to
Hmm.
onboard through the traditional method. You got to have lawyers, you got to pay, you got 5 or 6 lawyers at 500
Forget
bucks an
about it.
hour, right?
Oh yeah, forget about it.
So that means you're only going to deal with millionaires and billionaires, and you're only going to and you're going to pull in 100,000 chunks. We wanted to take this to the middle class of America and the world and allow them to be the owners of the wealth that MAD is creating.
Right.
And we wanted to go to average people. And so we were able to reduce our token, our onboarding down to 500 bucks in one of our raises. These are new methods that the SEC instituted during the past 5 or 6 years that we're taking advantage of. And so we have people can come on and get into our company for $500. I mean, there's no energy company in the world at our stage where you're going to
No.
see all this massive value created where you can get in at 500 bucks. I mean, it's
No.
incredible. Nobody's doing that. We're doing that and we're issuing it through tokenized equity so that you can pay in crypto and we can issue it out to your wallet.
Right.
That makes the transaction cost very low and makes the barrier to entry very low, and it transfers wealth to the people that need the wealth. Usually Goldman Sachs gets all the wealth. We're giving
Yeah.
it to the
The
public.
crew. The
We're
crew.
giving, yeah, yeah. We're giving it to the public. We're giving it. It's like philosophically, we need to create more wealth in the middle class of America. This is where we need expansion. We don't need more Bezoses, in my opinion, you know, and we don't need people that are dependent on the state. What we need is that robust middle that when I
100%.
was born made America work. I was born in
100%.
1958. We had a robust blue collar middle class. That's what I grew up in. And it is gone missing since 2000 when China joined the WTO and decimated our entire manufacturing in the United States of America and transferred all that wealth from us over there. So I want to reinstitute a robust middle class. And I think if we don't, I think we're in trouble. It's a structural deficit that needs to be addressed. And MAD is
100%.
one of the ways that I'm trying to do that.
Sure thing. And I mean, I think that's what's interesting, right? I think you have a lot of people within the Hex community working towards a similar goal,
Right.
which is essentially of trying to find ways to empower people to give themselves sovereignty and individualism and just opportunity, right? Because I think that at the end of the day, that's honestly all that everybody wants. And I think that just looking back on life, I think the one thing that I know to be true is that if everybody had equivalent economic opportunity, you wouldn't have all of this nonsense that we see from people today in terms of all the isms, right? I don't believe in any ism. I think people should be left the hell alone. That's what I think. Right?
You must be a libertarian, Wales.
Oh, I'm something. I don't know what I am, but I'm something. Because people just, I mean, what it is that people always try to find ways to interject themselves in your life without having a clue, right?
Right,
Everybody always
right,
knows what's best for you without consulting you.
right,
And that just, this is what we have in 2022, right? This is what I've seen my entire life.
right.
So it can't be that this is what works because clearly it does not. If it
No, and it's
did,
created disunity. I mean,
that's
it's
right.
created disunity because
That's right.
people don't like to have a yoke on their back, you know?
No,
We don't
not at
like
all.
to be we don't like to be controlled. We don't like I believe that humans were made um to be self-automated, you know? I mean, I think we are
Autonomous,
supposed to
that's right.
determine our path, and I don't think anybody knows what's going to give us value out of life better than the individual who is running that life, right? And so all of this command and control stuff, I think it gets people upset. I don't think they like it, you know? And I think people inherently want to chart their own course and they want to be able to. So what happens in our world is that if you've got to just barely survive, you never have a chance to really think. You never have a chance to spend that extra hours studying or working or becoming more attuned to what's really happening in the world. And I think that the power structures depend on that. They in the Roman Empire they called it bread and circuses. Keep them occupied with bread and circuses, and then they won't revolt on us. And nowadays it's video games and just barely scraping along, and that's a large section of our society. What I love about the crypto community is that these are thinkers. If you're into crypto, you're an early adopter, you're creative, you're thinking. Those are wonderful partners for MAD because those are the types of people that we like. Wales, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have muted myself. What I was gonna say is that what I was gonna say is that on top of that, not only are you an early adopter and creative and all the things you pointed out, but in conjunction with that, you're being proactive, right? You're thinking
Right,
ahead monetarily speaking. You're thinking ahead technologically speaking, and then once you think about the second and third order effects of that, right? You're thinking about sovereignty, freedom, how you can contribute back to society. I mean, when
right.
we look at the Hexagon community, this is literally all you see in the social
Yep.
sphere, like in the social media. Just how people are basically thinking, what can I do? What can I do? Can anybody give me any ideas, suggestions? Like people are just trying to find ways to contribute to society within this community. And this is what made me the most excited to talk to you because this is all you've ever done in my mind, right? Is just try to find ways to give back. And you've done it in a way that I probably should have instead of doing finance and all this other nonsense that I've been doing. Because once you're involved in the law, you're getting right at the gut of the situation, right? There's no runaround. You're right in there. And when you're right in there, it's kind of hard for them to just turn their back on you and say, get the F out of here.
What
Because you
it
got it
it
all
does,
right in writing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, and it does give one thing I'll say about having a law degree and having graduated from Georgetown Law School is that it has given me a platform um, that of credibility, you know, and then I think a lifetime of being involved in various endeavors, most of them energy, but then
Right.
many of them um, being political from the time of the Reagan administration on. I've tried to impact uh, the world in a positive way. Now, a lot of when I was young, I will tell you that a lot of what I did was just work and try to come up through the legal world, and it really wasn't until I hit really 50s or so that I started thinking, okay, now how do I give back? What I find is really cool about the crypto community and the Hexagon community is that here are people that are young. Here are people that are in their 30s and 40s. I've met wonderful people that have been blessed with having invested early into Hex that are now multimillionaires that are saying, okay, look, man, I got it. I got what I'm doing. And I didn't get to that point until later in my life. And so I meet these wonderful young people that are saying, how can I get involved in making the world a better place?
Right.
Well, MAD gives them that vehicle to not only make the world a better place through all the things that we've talked about, clean energy, access to energy, energy independence, all of those types of things, but it also allows them to do it in a free market setting where they're going to, if our plans and all of our projections are correct, which we believe them to be, there's a nice return coming back for doing the right thing and for cleaning up the planet. And how good can that? I mean, so you're doing good stuff, you're making money, the value of the company will go up as we fulfill the contracts that we have in place. So this is exciting, and I think it's such a good fit for crypto community because so many people have been blessed by having the ability now to say, okay, I don't have to worry about putting gasoline in the Volkswagen or feeding my kids or getting them shoes. I can look beyond that, and I can see what can I do? What can I do to give back? And I see so many people that are in that mode that it's super exciting. I mean, this community, the MAD community we're creating, as we start to distribute distributions back out to folks and put money back in their pocket through their ownership of our equity token, then they start to think about, what can we do? We get a freedom loving community that is growing in strength and growing and growing and growing in strength. And that is going to change the world. That's going to push back against the Davos set and the World Economic Forum and all the Klaus Schwabs of the world and say, hey, no, man, it ain't happening on our watch. And we've got the wherewithal to make sure that it doesn't. And
That's right.
that is pretty incredible.
That's right. And I mean, I think that, and I got to be honest with you, just for me to go personal for a little bit, when I started this whole streaming thing, I mean, I only intended to do one video. So people, just to explain to people, how cryptos work and all of this stuff, because, just, I'm not a streamer. I'm not a public person. I'm not, any of that. I'm not a fame seeker or anything like that. Um, but it just so happened that there happened to be a wide gap in the knowledge that I possess and in the value that I could bring to the community. So it just kept me getting pulled back in and pulled back in. And here I am a whole year later, still
Right.
contributing because why not? There's no
And you're
reason not
filling a
to.
need,
Correct.
information. I mean,
And
people need information. What does Wall Street really do? Wall Street is it's in the information
data
business. What
producing, yeah. Just producing
Absolutely.
data. That's it.
That's exactly right. Markets produce information. That's what they are. They're always seeking, relative value. That's what a
That's
market
right.
is. And
That's right.
that's why that works. And that's why that information is so critical. I think the problem is when you have a structure of finance in the world that allows a chokehold on what wins and what loses, that
Yeah.
then it can be manipulated. And that's the problem that we face. That's my biggest objection to Wall Street is that they will do like JP Morgan did with Tesla. And if there's a technology that is going to be dramatically disruptive, they're not going to let it out because it disrupts their profit margins.
Right, and let me just get to this little screenshot on the screen for those that are interested in allocating capital to MAD and contribute to changing the world for the better, and that is actual green energy. Check out the website on the screen. I actually dropped the link in the chat, so you can find it in there for those that are interested in engaging. Might be worth considering. So check it out. But yeah, so all of these things, it's just amazing how we look at the past 10 years or 12, 13, And all of these things kind of are just coalescing, meeting all at the same point in time, right? You have
Yes.
MAD, you have crypto, you have literally Hex coming right now out of nowhere.
Yep.
2 years young, entering his third year. A lot
Pulse
of
X.
people, yep, Pulse X, you got Pulse Chain coming. I mean, we're going to have
Yep.
our own ecosystem here shortly. I
Yep.
mean, this thing is going to just take over, right?
Yep.
And the old crypto is just going to slowly fade out, or it'll just linger around because some people just can't let go, and that's okay. But the future is almost here, and it's very interesting to see just what is on the horizon, because a lot of people don't even know within crypto that this is happening, right? And I don't know what you think, but in my experience, anytime a fork or something like that happens, what ultimately happens is that, of course, you're going to have people that dump it, but ultimately, money is valued, right? And even if it is free money or a duplication of something monetary, uh, the market gives it its monetary value, meaning it's not going to go to zero. So in cryptocurrency, these forks, these splits, these duplications, it's interesting because when people explain forks, they try to explain it as a stock split. But in reality, it works contra to that here because it's actually additive. It's not dilutive,
Right.
right?
It's
And
accretive.
yes, it's accretive. And the interesting thing is like I'm working with some Wall Street lawyers trying to get something set up here, a Reg D vehicle,
I feel bad for you.
yes, sir. It's hard for me to explain that like they don't
Yeah.
get it, they
Yeah. I feel
don't
bad for you.
yeah, they
Yeah.
don't get it. So
You're going to educate them, and then they're going to resell that knowledge to a whole bunch of other people,
yeah,
man. You're
yeah,
paying to
yeah. And
educate them on
it is what it
tokenization, man.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
what it is. I mean, you would think they would know something. I mean, what's funny was, well, this is off. This is offline for this because somebody might watch this. Let me not say that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but you got to take the time to educate people because crypto is so new.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: even though it's 13 years old relative to Bitcoin, the interesting thing is that even within the space itself, 95 to 97% of the people are miseducated in the subject. They don't actually know cryptocurrency at all. Because if they
Yeah.
did, they would understand that exchanges, centralized exchanges, are not supposed to be a thing, right? And we really didn't even get a decentralized exchange until 2019. So it's only
Right.
really recently that we've been able to really do crypto in the right way, right? So, yeah.
Well, you look at blockchain, and you see shut your mouth, Wales. There you go. That's a great comment. uh, I think I know that guy. Um,
You might.
anyway, yeah, you look at blockchain. When blockchain first coming out, I was 2017. I was advising some companies on legal ways to issue coins and ICOs and things of that nature, SEC, all those things.
Mhm.
And I remember IBM was getting into blockchain. And so the wonderful thing about blockchain is that it's decentralized, right?
Yep.
And I'm looking at it, and I've been in the energy field, since 1983, and tracking cargoes, doing things of this nature. I mean, when you're talking about logistics, blockchain is just the answer, man. An indelible, permanent, this decentralized record of every transaction that can never be done away with because it's in computers all over the world at the same
Yeah.
time. I mean, wow, what a
Exactly.
power that is, right?
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
IBM comes along and they get behind it and they go, okay, well, we're going to centralize it. And so they want to create a data farm, basically, a data center where they control their own blockchain. And then they've done away with one of the biggest values of it, which is the
Right.
decentralized nature. So if there's an EMP in one part of the world, then you never lose your record,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. So they're trying to get a chokehold. They're trying to say, okay, I'm IBM, man. I got to get a chokehold on this
Right.
blockchain. Well, baby, it ain't happening, man. Nobody that really understands it is going to go that way. And I think the
Yeah.
exchanges, the chain, you look at Binance and exchange, right? I mean, You look at all the wealth that thing has created in a short period of time, all the billionaires that now own it. That's a chokehold as well. That's a
Yeah.
control mechanism. That's not, if we're talking about a truly decentralized autonomous organization, then none of these exchanges and things of that nature that's not the right way to do it. that
No.
that's 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 a control mechanism. And then you
Yes, it is.
see, to all the hexicans out there, that hex has been locked on CMC at 201
Yeah.
forever, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? That's because Binance, took over CMC, and Binance has a competing coin.
Yep. That's
Whoa.
right.
Is that how we want the world to work? You know?
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of disgusting, right? When you sit there and think about what it is that they do, and then you have the public face of this innocent, do good entity,
Right.
right? When all you hear from those in the business is the complete opposite. And it's
Right.
just, it's crazy because they try to act as a centralized entity. They try to operate within that scope, but yet then claim to be that they're decentralized. You can't be both.
Right. Exactly. I mean, they are the epitome. I mean, look, the play that JP Morgan made against Tesla, you know,
Mhm.
those are the types of plays that people who are cutthroat and want to just make money for themselves, damn everybody else.
Yep.
You see that. That's what you see. Um, you know, Preventing other coins from being properly, uh, you know, put out
Highlighted, right?
on and prop. The largest single website for the ranking of tokens, right?
Right.
And then they manipulate that to their own internal benefit.
That's right.
Well, that's J.P. Morgan, right?
That's
Those are
right.
the bad guys, frankly, in the world, and that's what we want to. If we want to fight back against that kind of thing, Hex and what Richard Hart created, it operates truly on its own. I mean, it once he set that up, and he paid to have that totally set up. Then he launched. It was totally done. Everything was baked into it, and now it is truly autonomous. Who
That's
runs
right.
Hex?
Nobody.
Where's the management of Hex?
I've been looking for a while. Can't find them.
Right. It doesn't exist. It's
Exactly.
truly a DAO, right? It is
Right.
the definition of what this was supposed to be with the creation of Bitcoin, right? The very
Correct.
first idea out there of it. Now I think Hex improves upon that because Bitcoin is total scarcity as opposed to, Hex, which has an actual inherent value creation
Mechanism.
mechanism built
Right.
into it, right?
Right. Right. And I mean, I think
And
that
with Pulse
that's,
X and Pulse Chain actually has a
oh,
function, right?
forget about it.
I mean,
Yeah.
so now we're in the next generation of taking it to the next level. See, this is what's so cool. There's been wealth created through Karen wants the manager of Hex. That's great. That's funny. Anyway, you've created wealth by creating Hex. You've
Right.
created value, you've created wealth, you've created a community, you've distributed out to the people. Now we got all the people like you, like all the other people we know in the community, right? And they're
Mhm.
doing good things. And now we're going to go change it to the next. We're going to
Right.
create a functional, Pulse X, Pulse Change that's how this works. That's what MAD, that's what we hope to do with MAD with our community as we
Correct.
distribute money out to the people that get behind MAD. We hope that they're going to be, building, 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 and coming back in and doing more and doing
More. That's
better.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
It's gonna be
And then
beautiful,
having
man.
their kids have a step up, right? Their kids are going to
Yeah.
be better off than they would have been. It's a generational thing if we can make it
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
and that is where we are, man. That's why you said it. This is a really exciting time, and it is because we're in a transition. We're in a paradigm shift
Yes, sir.
in the financial world, right?
Yes,
And we're in
sir.
a paradigm shift in the energy world. And I think we're at a paradigm shift in the political world.
Yes, sir.
There's three simultaneous, if you make one of those circle charts, they're overlapping in the
Right.
sweet spot, and
Venn
that's where we need
diagram,
to
yeah.
be. Venn diagram, baby. So the sweet spot is going to be where you're in on the energy transition, you're in on the finance, the fintech and the financial world transition, and hopefully where the political, that little thing in the middle is where liberty lives,
That's right. That's right.
and that's, if we can make that happen, then man, the future is
Bright.
incredible, because
Very bright.
humans are amazingly innovative and creative and pushing and full of energy and wanting to do good. I really believe that people do want to do good. I think we should. I think in our hearts, we really don't want to go out there and be JP Morgans. We
No.
want to be people that are good, you know?
Yeah.
We want to
Yeah.
do good. We want to feel good. We want to help other people. I really believe that at our core, we have that in us.
Well,
I think we get stamped out sometimes, but I'd love to
yeah.
see that a flame sparked again and have everybody feeling that way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, look, we're sitting here having a conversation for over an hour, educating many individuals that probably didn't have a lot of this general knowledge that you and me both have, right? And this is how people, we as a community, get stronger, right? Is by
Right.
sharing this critical information that, while seemingly normal to us and every day, most people just really don't have a clue it even exists, right? I mean, I got to tell you, when I sit here and stream, man, I literally do the search in real time so people can see it's doable. It's not something that's out of anybody's reach, because it's like you said earlier, everybody's too busy on the hamster wheel. They won't take the time for themselves. And I got to tell you, I won't sleep most of, like, I will sleep 4 or 5 hours, and that's enough for me, because I have that drive that makes me want to find out, learn, figure things out, connect these dots, right?
Yep.
Because everything is out there if you look for it. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is hidden.
Yep.
And
And
just like you,
the thing about
go
these
ahead.
paradigm shifts,
Mm.
that's where massive wealth can be made,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
that's where it is made.
And that's where it is made. I mean, Bezos going from retail bricks and sticks to online retail,
Yeah,
massive wealth
crushed them.
made.
Yeah,
All of you know,
I mean, I remember.
Musk,
I
PayPal,
remember.
right?
I didn't buy CDs, and I'm like 37. I didn't get into buying CDs until after the year 2000. Like, I just did not like them. I was always a tape guy, cassette tape guy for the longest
That's
time.
funny. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's, you just like the sound better, whatever, whatever. And it's just like, eventually you had to stop using it because it just became impossible to find. And that's just time,
Yeah.
right? And
See, I was an
I
8-track guy. Yeah.
ah. You one up.
Yeah, baby. I
I mean,
got you on that one, man.
but this
You
is the
probably were
thing, right?
dealing with cassettes. I started out reel to reel, man. Then I went to 8-track. I was cutting edge, you know.
You were pushing that Hearst transmission, weren't you?
Oh, baby, absolutely, man. Yeah.
I mean, but this is the thing, right? When you mentioned paradigm shift, and we talked a little bit about this before we actually went live in the green room, and it's this is a point in time that's going to go down in history. Like,
Yes.
like this is a prominent point in time. This is not just history. This is going to be a prominent point in time that's going to stand out forever, because
Right.
it is so crucial. Because all the changes that are
Right.
happening, they're going to be permanent, just like the changes that happened yesteryear were permanent. Because
Yep.
there's too many of us now that are coming into resources that are getting fed up and actually have the drive to do things and will do things and are going to be pretty damn
Right.
hard to stop, because there's too
Yeah, and
many of us
that's
now.
that's the power of numbers. I mean,
That's right.
you look at you had J.P. Morgan against one man, Tesla, right? And of
Hmm.
course he stamped him out. What we're talking about here, people say, well, if you're going to launch this wireless stuff, won't you get stamped out the way Tesla did? Well, that our structure doesn't allow for that, because we're creating a movement of the people. We're pushing it out the door to the people. We're pushing the ownership out the door to the people. And as we have the more people you have behind something, the more people involved. How can you stamp that out? It's like you can't stamp out crypto
Yeah,
because
that's right.
it's all over the place. It grows like wildfire. This virtual reality that you and I are sitting in right now, talking to one another, it is limitless. It's geographically limited, unlimited, so it's unlimited as to people that you can reach. We've got people from literally all over the world who have come into MAD, invested in MAD, become part of the solution to the problem. We have a map on our website that I love that shows everybody where they're from. And really, honestly, we are global in nature now, but we are decentralized global. We're not like the global command and control that the World Economic
Right.
Forum wants, right? We're the
Yeah.
we're the
Yeah.
opposite of that. We're pushing back. That's, if we don't, if we don't solve what they call the global warming problem, and I'm not going to even speak as to any of the I don't care about any of the politics of that. It doesn't matter to
Right.
me. But what I do know is the reality is that if we don't move to fossil free fuels, and if we don't stop emitting greenhouse gases, then that's going to be an excuse for a global entity to say that this is a global problem which requires a global solution, and then all the globalists are going to get together and they're going to control everything.
That's right.
We have the free market answer to that. We can solve that problem, but they're not trying to solve that problem. If they were
No.
trying to solve the problem, they'd have made some freaking progress from the time that, An Inconvenient Truth came out, right? In 2009, right?
Right.
Or whatever it was, 1990. I don't know. I can't remember when it was, but it was a long time ago. I mean, I've been hearing that guy talk about this forever. And there's an old saying, when it's all said and done, there'll be more said than done. And right now, there's
Yeah.
only saying they aren't doing anything. Everything is
Nothing.
going in the wrong direction. If they really wanted to
Everything.
solve this problem, they could. We have
Yeah.
the science. We are industry people. We know how to solve it. I could sit down and tell them how to solve it.
Right.
John Kerry, come up to Idaho, baby, sit in my conference room. I will educate you up, John. You know,
Figure it
I
out.
mean,
Make
that
it happen.
we've got to solve it. The people have to solve it, or else the elites are going to take over. And then that's what they're looking for. You
Right.
know, they're
Right.
looking for global problems that require a global solution so that individuals cannot be free.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of the thing, right? When you sit here and think about how they squeeze people, well, it's in utilities, it's in the basics, right? Shelter, energy,
Healthcare.
healthcare, food
Yeah.
costs, right? The cost to
Yeah. Yeah.
live is a cost to survive. And that
Right.
comes in the actual inflationary forces that as an average person you deal with every day. Like in my mind, my whole existence in the 21st century has just been stagflationary in my mind because I remember when gas was under $1. And I
Yeah.
remember when it traversed $1, and I remember how everything just went off the rails at that specific. Like to me, that's when everything went off the rails, right then and there,
Yeah. When
right
I
then and there.
when I was 16 and I got my driver's license in Baltimore, Maryland,
Hmm.
gas was 32 cents a gallon and a pack of
Wow,
Marlboros was 32 cents.
wow, yeah.
Yeah, baby.
By the
That
time I
was
was 16, a pack of Reds were, I want to say, 8 and change. I mean, it was crazy at the time. Now it's
right.
double that, right? In New York
Yep.
City, it's double
Yep.
that. I mean, I think it
Yep.
might be 20 a pack now. It's retarded. But then $8 and change was like I couldn't believe people were paying that for a pack of cigarettes. I was like,
A
wow,
pack
you
of
must,
cigarettes.
yeah.
32 cents, man, when I was 16, baby.
Yeah, when they actually had some tobacco, right?
Yeah, yeah. And when we thought they were good for us, I mean, heck,
Right, yeah. There you go. I mean that
Chesterfields.
yeah, that ties into the day, right? We see today how they're trying to force people to do things and put things in their body that they don't want or need to put
Yep.
in, and it all ties to the same situation, right? I mean,
Yep.
we see history and then it's like people just ignore it.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
got no time for it. No, thank you.
Well,
But
I mean, I look at what people have to do to just survive. I look at young
right,
people. I got 5 kids, and I watch them. I got four daughters, and they have kids, and just paying for the shoes and paying for the gas and paying for the housing and paying for the phone bill and paying for all that stuff. It's not easy on people, and it shouldn't be that way. But I do believe that um, the forces that are in power kind of depend on people being preoccupied all the time
Yes, sir.
so that they can't do this stuff. And I watch my kids, and I think how hard they work, and they're good. They're all just wonderful kids, and they don't have time to study the way I studied when I was young, and
Right.
it's a different world out there than
Yeah.
it was when
Right.
I was growing up. This is one of the reasons why, as I get older, I try to give back, and I try to do things that can help make it better, because I feel like I grew up during a golden time when I just had an enormous amount of freedom as a young man, and could chart my own course.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of sad. I remember when I was supposed to graduate college from when I started in 2008. I didn't actually graduate in, I'm sorry, 2012. I didn't actually graduate until 2015. And I mean, during that time, right, like the U.S. economy was just going one direction, and that was south, right? Like it's never really
Yep.
picked up. It just
Yep.
so happened that the industry I ended up choosing uh, was the right one, which happened to be the people that are destroying most of the things we got going on. So it was taking that interest. I got to tell you, let me tell you a little bit how I even ended up here. So you know my background being in the military, and that kind of led me to understand energy, and that kind of led me to understanding geopolitics, and then that kind of led me to understanding macroeconomics and understanding the economic implications of what was happening abroad, and why gas was actually expensive at home and not cheap like they said it was supposed to become after, right? Because that was the story. That was one of the stories I was sold. Um, and it was taken into all of those things that kind of set me down the path of eventually ending up in the financial realm. Because then by the time I got to college, which was in 2007, the crisis was already, you know, all the way in full and all the way in motion. It was just in
Oh
motion.
yeah.
Things were falling
You
apart.
could see
This,
it coming in
oh yeah,
2007. That's for sure. I knew it
I,
was coming.
I got to tell you, when I got out of the military, I took a real estate class because I wanted to do real estate. And it turned out that everybody and their mama wanted to do real estate too. And at the time, I didn't understand sentiment or extreme sentiment, right? And that was, I mean, when I was taking this class, it was a 10-day class or something like that, and or 5 days, and it was standing room only most of the days. I mean, if that's not a sign of overcrowded trade, I don't know what is. Long story short,
Yeah.
I never ended up doing that, luckily, which was eventually the right thing to do because there was no market already at that point. I mean, 2006, the market in New York was already basically toast, so there was nothing to do there. And then come 2007, then 2008, and everybody finds out, what was actually going on, and then
Right.
you know
Securitized mortgaging.
yeah, and then
Yep.
2008 and 2009, then Bitcoin comes, and we learn about Bitcoin, and then all the way into 2017, you see that top, and I honestly thought that the regulators were going to get involved after
I did
2017.
too. I did
Interesting
too. I
that
thought
interesting that they didn't.
2017 was going to be the end of it.
Yeah, me too. Interesting
I
that they
really
did
did.
nothing. Yeah, but that just goes to show what the regulators are there to do, in my opinion, in my professional opinion. That's what that showed me. Because for them to allow all of these so-called ICOs, which in many cases were just websites, right, that took your money and that was it, to be sprinkled all over the internet like that. I mean, these are the kind of things they should have been all over. I mean, that was, you know, fraud city. That was easy money for them, and they did nothing, not a thing. And to see them pretending to just prosecute individuals for insider trading, quote unquote, when we know Congress folk are just slinging their trades left and right and making millions. I mean, it's unconscionable that these people think that any individual with a brain can take them seriously. Right. And it's just like we were talking at the beginning about how these agencies make these rules. It's kind of like the travel rules, right? Travel money rules. How is it that they can breach your Fourth Amendment rights consistently with respect to your finances just because of there might be some terrorism out there? I mean, the instance of terrorism relative to the quality and the quantity of checks that are done on people's source of wealth is ridiculously skewed. It's zero.
Yeah. All the Patriot Act requirements
Yeah,
of,
that's right.
doing any sort of exchange, and the
Value.
know your customer requirements. I mean, and that's the area that they're probably, if they do attempt to put a knife into crypto, which I don't think the United States can do at this
Nobody
point.
can. Nobody can.
Well, China
They can
has tried,
psyop.
but
They can psyop to
right,
try, but
right.
that's it. Because that was the thing that. All right. So when I came across Bitcoin early days, I bought it and I sold it just like every other genius, right? Because I did, yeah. Because I didn't think.
Well, at least you bought it. I didn't buy it. I looked at it and I said, "That's crazy." I,
Right. I mean, it was crazy. It
I'm
was
like,
crazy
"What? I don't
because
understand that." I don't get
think
it.
about it. We went
I'll
from
buy
tree
gold.
sticks.
I'll buy
We
gold.
exactly, but we went from okay, so we went from gold to tree sticks to paper, right?
Right,
Money to now
right.
invisible money, right? Electronic money, digital
Totally.
money, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it was hard to wrap your head around that at the time, and I was a young guy. Like, I was only like maybe 24, 25. Like I wasn't that smart, right? Like I didn't know that much. I had to learn so much as to get to the point to where I'm at now, to where I can even explain half of this stuff. And
right.
it was mind bending. So to think that these people couldn't shut it off at that point for me was impossible. I didn't understand how the internet worked. Now I know they can't do anything about it. So
Yeah. I mean,
they're at
I've been
odds.
to, I've done transactions in China, and so I've been
Okay.
behind, what they call the wall, their computer internet wall there. And
Yeah, the firewall.
yeah, they have they do have massive control over the internet once you're in Beijing, once you're in China, and
Right.
they really do. I mean, they're a total totalitarian nation. I mean, I know that a lot of Americans don't understand it, but that is totally an authoritarian system of control, and they do cut off. I mean, I would do experiments and I'd put in words, and they would shut me down.
Right.
They were
Right.
monitoring every search that I did. So they have a
Wow.
massive amount of. If
Power.
anybody could shut it down in China, it would be the Chinese government. But the Chinese people are also infinitely creative as well and very
Yeah.
industrious.
They
And
have
I'm
to
pretty
be.
sure that they'll figure out how to get around it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like trying to defy gravity.
Yes.
It can only work
Yes.
so long.
That's right.
It's like all of the interventions in markets. They only work so long. They usually have all kinds of unintended consequences. So crypto may become extremely more valuable in China because it's a black market, right?
Right.
I
That's right. I
mean,
mean, I don't
where
know if you remember, there was a premium for Bitcoin in China and Africa and
right,
offshore nations for a while
right,
back in the day
right,
because it made sense for the exact reasons that you just stated. I mean, capital controls and all these things that these
sure,
governments do. I mean, by default, it's going to give a tool of this caliber a premium. And back then, there were only but so many coins to trade, right? It's not like now where there's
yeah,
thousands of
yeah,
coins and
yeah,
thousands of routes. And that's
right,
kind of like what makes Hex so unique because Hex is unlike everything else. And I mean, I got to tell you, when I found Hex, I spent 60 days just trying to figure that thing out, making sure that it was what they said it was because it sounded too good to be true, right? And I mean,
right,
coming from Wall Street and knowing that there was no yield and all these things, man, once I realized that this was a real deal, and oh man, I found it like right at the sweet spot because it was right before Big Payday. I didn't really understand what I was doing around Big Payday, but I still got some, right? And that was the important part. But eventually, after that point in time, I knew that I had to get some size in there and get my stake in the future because this is one of those trades that's once in a lifetime, right? Mad, Hex. I mean, if things go the way that we want them to go, we can't lose, and all we have to do is what we're already doing. And I think that that's the most important lesson to take away from just being involved in this stuff day to day, because I think the hardest thing for us to see as people that dabble in crypto every single day is that outside of our little virtual world, this is non-existent. People don't realize they have an option outside of the fiat system. So education is really important. Talking about all these relevant topics are important because they bring people to the conversation. They bring people to the table, right? Because nobody likes where things are right now, and I think that that's obvious for most people. And just the fact that most people comply with everything that's going on doesn't mean that they like it, right? And I think we have to be aware of that. So I think if we can use the allure of financial freedom to educate people, we can't lose, right? And
Right.
this has been my mission from once I realized I had to continue. That was how I was able to continue because I didn't have like once I was done explaining crypto, I really didn't have much else to say because it's all the same thing. So I had to figure out how to interject this value mechanism into everyday life, and it's by people understanding all the things that we understand, and it's this whole big picture and how it works and how everybody's getting lied to on so many fronts. And I mean, in some states, it's illegal to not pay utilities. What the hell
Right.
is that? I
It's
mean,
illegal to be off the grid in the
yeah,
state of Florida right now, you know?
yeah,
So, I
it's
mean,
crazy.
well, we're going to change that, baby. I got to tell you, because, our tech, we're working on some things that are so cool that you won't believe them. I mean, we got an R&D side that I don't talk about much,
Oh,
but,
I'm sure you can't.
you know,
That's
yeah,
why I
no,
haven't
well, we
asked
can't
much.
until we roll it out, you know?
Right?
But
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but but I mean, the wireless tech is like game changing. But we had some other pretty cool stuff that's going to game change as well. And it's gonna it at our core, what we're all about is we're all about creating more freedom for the individual, more choices for the individual,
That's
more
right.
more
That's
we
right.
would love to have everyone live off the grid,
Hundred
and
percent.
we think we can get there.
Yeah. Well, you know
You
what?
know,
It's interesting because now we have all of these wealthy individuals with the same desires, and now those that have the ability to, essentially start up a business. And I'm involved with one of those groups of folks who, I've started MCA, My Own Crypto Advisors, and our goal is essentially to provide financial services in a one-stop shop format to individuals that are crypto wealthy because we don't have that ability. We can't just go anywhere and set up an account with our crypto as a valuable asset. It's just non-existent. That option, no, it
yep,
didn't exist until the other day when we made it and gave it to people, right? And this is the power of being a Hexican and being involved with people that want more from life than what currently is in existence, right? And
yep,
I think that
yep,
this is the power of surrounding yourself with the right folks, right? The right people, people that want education, people that want more from life, people that want to have conversations that are important to have and not just shy away and go back to watching their TV show and living
right,
another day, right? Like that,
yep,
I got family, you got family. I'm sure we both have people that in our families that's exactly what they do. And I'm just like, man, how am I even related to this person? Like, I know what I'm talking about, but you're gonna ignore me. Like, this is insane. That's pure insanity, right?
yep,
I mean, and
yep,
this is what people do. This
yeah,
is what people do, and it's hard to find yourself in a world where that is the norm. But
yep,
that's the norm, right?
yep,
So, all of us taking these steps forward to deal with energy, to deal with finances, personal finances, to deal with political situations. Because here's the thing, money and energy, they're one and the same. A lot of people might not realize that, but you can't do one without the other.
right.
And it's no coincidence, I don't think, that I gravitated from one to the other. I started my life out as an energy individual, and here I am talking about energy again in a financial capacity because guess what? Everybody has to pay these bills, and guess what? They suck. And the way it happens, like the whole infrastructure, the whole process from getting power to receiving power to paying for your bill, it's so just wrong, right? And
Yeah, and it's and it, at the root, it's controlling. You know,
that's the whole
so
point of it,
it's
especially with
the
these
whole
smart
point of it.
meters now. now, now
Exactly,
now with these smart meters,
exactly.
right? Oh my
So it's
goodness.
all total control, and that's where decentralizing the grid and decentralizing the power distribution has got to come. to maximize liberty, because as long as we're under the control of that centralized distribution system, which is actually controlled and regulated by the state, then you got it. You got control at the political level. You got control at the energy level.
Right, right. And this is an interesting question. I was just thinking of something similar. And I don't know if we can really talk about transmission in a technical aspect, like how it would work or what would
Yeah.
have to happen. So if you
So
could get
that's
into
that's
that.
an easy question.
Okay.
The houses themselves would not need to be rewired or unwired. They would be disconnected from the transmission line that comes into the house. The question is,
Got it.
I guess everybody can see it. So there's a couple of ways to make it work with wireless energy, wireless power, and it would work probably in stages. Right now, in your community, you have something called a substation. It's this big thing behind chain link fence with all these huge transformers and all kinds of equipment in it. And it's a centralized location. Usually, the really big, heavy transmission lines come into a substation, and then that substation then transmits energy to the individual houses through wires. So, the easiest way to roll this out initially would be to take the wireless electricity to the substation and then take that from the substation to the homes.
Right.
But the next generation of that would be to have a receiver on your home. And then you would be able to receive individually at your house wireless electricity. We would be able to down the road, and there's miniaturization labs that are able, that have already we've already spoken to, that will be helping us with this. We'll be able to
Nice.
miniaturize the receiver so that we can build it into automobiles, so that
Wow.
electric vehicles will receive as they run, right?
Right.
So as you're driving your car, you're going to be receiving the electricity through the receiver built into the car, and you're going to have unlimited range, right?
Hmm.
It could be that um, you pay. I mean, we are thinking that once we get this set up, that it would be very logical, because this would be a global thing, to issue a token which becomes the means of commerce for exchange in the power industry, of the wireless power industry. So you buy your tokens and you pay in tokens. And we can actually have a wallet transaction that allows you to drive your car instead of filling your tank with gasoline, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so tokenization in the blockchain, I think, are going to play a huge role. Our We call it golden cipher. You can learn about it on the website. Is our next generation computer technology, which will play a huge role in this. But that's a decentralized aspect of it. Another way that you can easily decentralize, and not easily, but the technology is here, is we're into hydrogen. We're involved with one of the largest hydrogen projects in the world right now, creating carbon free hydrogen, which is also a wonderful transportation tool. Right now there's not enough base power, consistent, dispatchable, 24/7 reliable power to run all the electric vehicles we're going to need to run, or all that. So
Right.
if we really want to get there, hydrogen is another way to do it, through fuel cells, which create electricity and then run electric motors in cars as well.
Right.
So that hydrogen distribution system, but you can take a fuel cell, a hydrogen fuel cell, and have it in your house, and then it can generate the electricity into your house, just as if you hooked up a generator outside of your house to run your house. So there's
Right.
a lot of ways to decentralize, and individual power sources that are purchased for a home. It, I'm betting that over the course of time, as this technology becomes more and more available, and it is carbon free production of power, which
Right.
is what we need and what we want, the cleanest power possible. Um, that's going to allow people will demand independent set power sources, because we're going to provide them to them, right?
Right.
And as we provide them to them, people will want them, and then the laws will have to change. I'm quite certain that AT&T, which was heavily invested in wired phones throughout the whole world, was not all that happy with the idea that we would have wireless cell phones. But guess what? Everyone saw it, everyone wanted it, everybody demanded it, and the change happened. So
Yeah.
when there's a better solution out there, creative destruction, which is what the free market does, the old way goes to the, goes
To the
down.
wayside. Yeah.
Nobody, yeah, to the wayside, and the new technology comes in. It happens every time, and just like trying to hold the tide from changing in the ocean, once
Right.
this starts, no one can make it not happen. It's going to happen. So
Right.
I foresee with the technology that Matt is investing in right now, and the technology that Matt is involved in, and we have a contract with some of the coolest data centers that are being rolled out in the world. So we already have a customer for our technology. We have a customer base, a really well-heeled customer base to roll out all this tech. And people say, how do you know you're not going to fail? How are you going to do it? We've been blessed by having a very well-heeled customer that needs basically our technology to support clean data centers, which have never been done before. We're
Right.
working with a company that uses a different cooling system for their data centers, and therefore they use 40% less electricity and 98% less water. That's a game changer in data centers,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
is a game changer in crypto.
Right.
Because you have to think of that, right? What's
Yeah.
the biggest drawback? You were talking about how energy and finance are the same thing. Well, in
Hmm.
crypto, energy and finance are absolutely the same thing, because
That's right.
without energy, there is no
Internet.
actual blockchain. It
Yeah.
goes away, right?
Yeah.
You got to
That's right.
power it.
That's
So
right.
how do you power a clean data center 24/7 so that it can do all the work that it needs to do? How does that happen without using any fossil fuels? We're solving that problem today, and we have a customer that wants us to solve that problem with them, and we're in partnership with them. And so that's happening. But that same tech that we're using there can be
Right.
used to take people off the grid. And it will. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to be greater independence. It's a major game shift. It's a major paradigm shift. We are at
Right.
the tip
So
of that sphere, you know?
right. Of course. So I gotta ask, like with any changes, right? There's usually drawbacks. What, if any, are the drawbacks to all of the projects you guys are engaged in, even if it's just something as menial as logistics? Because there's always got to
Well,
be a drawback, right?
Well, there is, anytime you're rolling out something new, you're taking tech from the lab, and you're taking tech from, then you take it to a sort of initial proof of concept phase, right?
Right.
And then you roll it out to commercialization. Now, we've been involved in this a lot. We've built a lot of things. My team has built an awful lot of things over the years. So we know what we're doing, and we know how to do it, but there is always that gearing up and for the commercialization of a new product on the market. And there are opportunities to stub toes. Of course there are. We like to think that we don't stub the same toe twice, but we're going to stub a toe. We know we will.
Right. Right.
But it's scalability, it's commercialization, and it's deployment, and that takes
Time.
dedicated people.
Yeah.
It takes good tight management. It takes making sure that we hit our budget numbers. We have financial people, we have legal people, we have industry people, we have energy experts, we've got the scientists, we've got the engineers, we've got all those folks,
Yeah.
and that's why we're pretty convinced. I mean, before I started MAD, we were a group of people that did this for other people for pay, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, like I had the financial guys, they built financial models for investment banks in the
Right.
energy field, right?
Right.
So those experts are working with us. Um, we have on our team a fellow that has done more standing up of liquid natural gas facilities throughout the world than any other person.
Wow.
And so we have those types of experts. Those are the types of people that I represented as an attorney. And when
Right.
we started MAD to take the solution to this problem to the people, we had to have immense expertise to make sure we could get it done. And so we assembled that team. We have people down in Houston, we've got people in Puerto Rico, we've got people here in Idaho, we have a hell of a team. Now, are we going to have to expand that? Yes, we are. But
Yeah.
that's why we're counting on people to come in and help by investing in MAD and by, MAD.energy is the website. You can go on there and you can see it. And there's an invest now button. You can come on and become an owner of what we're rolling out. You can be part of this thing. And we believe that we're at at a paradigm shift in the energy culture and the energy industry, where just like Rockefeller made a ton of money when we went from whale oil to petroleum,
Right.
going from fossil fuels to carbon-free energy transmission, carbon-free energy production, carbon-free transportation. There are major opportunities there. That's a paradigm shift. That's where wealth is made. What's different about MAD is that we're not capturing that wealth on Wall Street. We're capturing that wealth into the people that come on board before it all happens. And that's where the big push is. That's where the big jump
Right.
in value is.
Yeah. So let me
Usually, if you buy,
explain.
you know this because you're a Wall
Yeah.
Street guy, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
underwriters make all the money. The banks
That's
make all the
right.
money, right?
That's right. I
I
was just
mean, the
gonna
guys
explain
who
the
buy the
difference to the
stock,
people. They
yeah,
don't make
man, they're getting
anything.
the crumbs. They're getting the
Yeah.
crumbs.
That's
Yeah,
right.
what we're doing is we're giving the people, we're
Right.
giving the people what Goldman Sachs would take.
That's right. So let me explain what this investment process is to the people, just so they can have a something to compare it to. So if you were to buy or allocate any capital to MAD, right, you would more than likely, if you're a person, regular person, be investing as a retail individual, and that's relatively new. That wasn't possible before, and
That
this
was
is
not
why.
possible for the Jobs Act of 2016.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So what is that? Reg CF, I think is what they call it, right?
Reg CF, yeah, and those
That's right.
regs didn't come out until 2018, and that's why we didn't start MAD until 2019.
Okay.
We're one of
You
that.
were
We're only the third company to ever offer equity, tokenized equity,
right. Yeah, it's not a common
and
thing.
the
That's
first
right.
energy company to ever do it.
Right. It's not a common thing. So this is equivalent to buying into an entity at the VC phase, which means
Correct.
pre-public release, right? So this coin doesn't exist on any blockchain or anything like that. You're allocating capital and you're getting issued units in exchange for value. And over time, the value is going to be locked up and is going to increase with time because as targets and numbers are hit, as George was explaining earlier, that's how the value is accreted over time. So it's just another timing game. But here, the utility is different, right? Because this is to meet an end goal. And this end goal is free ourselves because, I mean, imagine having the ability to not have to be beholden to some random entity because we're all beholden to random entities. We're not really beholden to anything that we decided to be beholden to, and I think that that's missed on a lot of people, right? And this is you making a decision to invest in something that's you're going to be decisive about the change in, right? Because this is something that you get to see, read, and educate yourself on, and understand that this is extremely beneficial, and this is actual green energy. Like I think that's like the biggest thing to highlight here. This is actual green energy. You don't need any miners. You don't need any petroleum to be burnt off at high levels. Like if it's China with their lithium mines, right? Like this isn't what's happening here. So this is very important that people understand that at a very base level. So this is what's going on here. You're getting into something basically at the launch stage. Like if you're sacrificing in the pulse chain, this is the equivalent. You're basically giving money to these guys so they can take care of business, and we're gonna benefit from that change. I mean, you can't imagine what this could do to the world. You just
And
can't
you're going to get a return on your investment as well,
over
assuming
time,
that
right?
all of our projections. So, I mean, it's not just a token that is not. You actually become the owner of the company when you
Ah,
invest in MAD, you become the owner of the company. So not only do you get distributions, but
there you
you
go.
own a limited partnership unit, and
Right.
my team is the general partner, and we only own 1%.
Right.
So
Typical.
if you think
Yeah.
about, like, if you compare this, this is not an ICO. This is tokenized equity. But were you to compare it to an
Oh,
ICO, normally the founders will have 60% and they'll only sell off 40, right?
right.
And so the
If that.
founders make this huge gain.
Yeah.
That's not how we've done this game.
Yeah.
What our structure is that unless we're distributing money out to the people that have invested in these limited partnership units that are represented by our token, unless we're returning money to you, we're not making money. The general partner doesn't make money. There are
Right.
salaries he
Because.
paid to keep the thing going, but there's no upside
Right.
distributed. So I've tried to align it so that the owners of the company, the people that are coming in and investing, the population out there,
Sure. The
they're
LPs.
the owners, so that the interests of the general partner that's running things is totally aligned
Lines. That's
with
right.
the interest of the people that are in the investors and the owners. So that's how that works. And it's important that the investors know that they are limited partners and therefore they have no liability, which, as Wall Street guy, you know how important that is.
Right.
None of your assets are at stake if something went terribly wrong, something blew up, or there was a big lawsuit or something like that. The people that are coming in as investors, they have no liability for any of that stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a pretty good structure for people coming in, and we spent a lot of time and effort to make it right and make it compliant. We've done a lot of work with the SEC. We have lawyers that specialize in the Securities and Exchange Commission Act and working with the SEC, advising us,
Right.
just like you were talking about having Wall Street lawyers.
That's right.
We got those too.
Yep. Gotta
So,
have
well,
them.
you got to have them because you can't
That's right.
mess up,
That's right.
especially
That's
if
right.
you're doing something new and innovative that is really going to change things. The more successful we become, the greater the likelihood is that we'll become under greater scrutiny. And so it's been very important to us to get it right from the beginning.
100%. That's exactly right. I mean, with all the things that we're doing in the background, same game plan. You can't
Yep.
set up a house with a crooked foundation, right? And that's basically the same vantage point that you got to operate from.
Yep.
Quick
100%.
question, yeah, and the quick question just for somebody that asked in the chat. Then the question was if offshore foreign investors can invest, and I think the answer
Yeah.
to that is yes, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that
There's no prohibition as long as you're not from one of the states that are on the OFAC list, like North Korea, Iran,
right,
But I
right,
mean,
right,
generally, wherever you are, unless you're on one of those, restricted nations that the United States has decided that no United States citizen could do business with, then you're cool. And we
yeah,
have investors from all over the world. It's really exciting.
right. So George, we've been at this for 2 hours. I don't know if I've overstepped on a little bit on time. So if you gotta go, that's cool. If not, we can wrap it up in 5 minutes if that's all right.
Yeah,
Because this
I'm
has
good
been
for another 5 minutes.
cool.
Where I live, it's noon and 11
Oh,
after, and
nice,
so I got a little rumbly in the tumbly. But
nice, nice, nice.
other than
Feel you.
that, I'm good.
Okay, cool, cool. So we'll wrap it up. Look, man, it's been a pleasure. We got to talk again in the future. This has been great. Being able to provide this vantage point to people, I think, is important because I think people get boxed in when they think crypto is just about money, and I think it's important for people to understand that crypto is a tool, right? And it's just a tool that's going to
Yep.
free us if we decide it to be that, right? And we have to decide it to be that. And this is why education is so important. People knowing what's going on is so important. People being aware of all of us that are aware so that they can become even more aware is important because there's so much information out there that we can't discuss it all in one day, even if we wanted to.
Oh my
These,
goodness.
yeah,
We
we could
started
talk
out
for,
with constitutional questions, and
that's right.
I teach a course on the Constitution, and I mean it's 14 different sessions.
There you go.
So,
There you go.
and we were covering some complex stuff there in the beginning, Wales,
There
and
you go.
man, you can go on for that, forever.
Yes, I
So
can.
yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, in another life, I probably would have been a constitutional lawyer because, man, I
Well,
love it.
you get it. You
Yeah,
get it. I'll tell
I
you
love
that.
it,
I'm
man.
impressed.
Thank you, sir. I love it. I love it. It's a hobby. It's a hobby. I gotta say. People tell me all the time, "You're not a scientist. You're not this. You're not that." I'm like, "Nah, I'm not anything." But you know what? I like to read.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
that's all you got to do. It's not that hard.
Yep. My grandfather ran away from home when he was 11 years old, never went
Wow.
to school, served in the military, was in World War I, World War II, had no formal education whatsoever. And he was one of those well-read, smartest
There
guys
you
I
go.
ever knew,
There you go.
And
Didn't
some
have
of
to
the
go to
smartest
school.
people I've ever met have zero education, formal education, but they have
Right.
minds and they're inquisitive and they're thinking and they're yearning to figure things out. And those
Right.
are brilliant people.
That's the key. The thirst for knowledge
Yep.
is key. You got to
Yep.
want to have that clarity, right?
Yep.
And I think that's, people that want are the people that achieve. And
Yep.
having the desire to want to achieve, I didn't start out my life with having ambition. It was only later on in life that I realized that I was missing that and I had to find it, because it was like I had no purpose. I was just doing what everybody else did, right? Going to school, this and that and the other. But when you find your way and you can, realize your abilities or try to discover them, that requires you making time, that requires you being interested in doing that in the first place. And I think that reading is a big part of that. Just seeking
Huge.
information. You got to just be
Huge.
willing to seek information. I'm not
Yep.
anybody that's special. I think that anybody can do what anybody that I just sat here and did, can do. It's not rocket science. Just read, right? That's
Just reading
literally
and
it.
thinking,
Yeah,
reading
reading
and
and
think
thinking.
about it. And I think that is fulfillment. I think humans are designed to achieve.
Yeah.
We are designed to strive, right? And
Hmm.
if we strive, we eventually thrive.
That's right.
And that's what we need to be doing. If we're not striving, we're never thriving.
Never.
And I
That's a
think the
fact.
ultimate human fulfillment is to reach those goals.
That's
I'm
it.
63. I'm still striving every single day, man. I get up early. I'm doing it. I'm striving. I'm striving. I'm striving. People would look at me now and say I'm thriving because
Right.
I have had some success in my life.
Right. Right.
But those are if they say, "Oh, look at that guy," he's led a charmed life. What they're missing is the striving part,
That's right.
because
Complacency
it's
kills.
baby, it's there every single day. For I started working as a young man, so I've been
Right.
working my entire life. But you get a lot of fulfillment out of work. So that's
That's
what I
right.
think. I think it's important, and that's what I love about the crypto community is that they're doing it. They're thinking. They're innovating. They're striving all the time, and they're
That's right.
benefiting from it. And it's a
That's right.
beautiful thing to see. Your story is very uplifting, and I hope people see what you've done and they listen to you, and the lesson that they should come away with is, man, hard work, a little thought, little passion. I can
Goes a
get
long
there
way.
just like whales did.
Goes a long way. I never in my life thought I'd be talking to you. I used to read about you. See?
Well, it's
And
an honor both ways, my friend. I'm very
well,
impressed. It's been a great
thank you, sir.
discussion. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
sir.
having me on.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And, thank you for everybody in the chat for taking the time on this holiday to allow us to engage. Check out mad.energy/invest. Get involved in the future. It's not just crypto, guys. It's every facet of freedom that we need to tackle. So let's get with it. Thank you, guys. I'm going to play my little outro. George, I know you got to go get some grub. You can skip out if you want. It's been a pleasure, man. We will be in touch, sir. Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Wales. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much.
Of course. No, thank you. Thank you. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. That's it. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. This motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. Man, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Yash D, everybody. My God. Hex agents, bro. Everybody.